He was less than 1 hour away from becoming a millionaire. $37 million. A new life. A clean slate. A plane ticket out. But instead of signing inheritance papers, Steve Riley collapsed. By the next morning, he was dead, and the woman who loved him, the woman who couldn't stop talking about the money, was standing right beside him. This is not just a story about greed. This is a story about timing, about poison, and about a woman who may have talked herself into becoming the prime suspect before the crime was even discovered. Less than 24 hours before Steve Riley's death, police officers stood inside his apartment, responding to a routine disturbance call. A drunk neighbor had been harassing residents, and Steve's fiancée, Anna, known to friends as AA, called 911 to calm things down. On the surface, it was nothing unusual, but what happened next would later chill investigators to the bone. While speaking casually with officers, AA began to brag. Not about safety, not about fear, but about money. He gets his inheritance this afternoon, she told police confidently. That's why we're moving. We're paying off all our bills, and then we're taking a long vacation. She explained that Steve's lawyer was flying in that very day to finalize paperwork. By tomorrow, their financial struggles would be over. At the time, officers didn't think much of it. They had no idea Steve Riley was hours away from dying. Years earlier, Steve had received a strange call from a man claiming to be his long-lost uncle from Ireland. Over time, the story checked out. Lawyers got involved. Documents were exchanged. The inheritance was real. Originally estimated at $17 million, the amount had grown, thanks to investments, into over $30 million. For Steve, it meant freedom. For AA, it meant everything. Friends later said she couldn't stop talking about it. Living in castles, starting over, leaving the past behind. But there was one problem. Steve had begun talking about leaving her. On the day the inheritance was supposed to be finalized, Steve, AA, and two friends headed to the airport to meet the lawyer. Everything seemed normal until Steve suddenly became violently ill. He said he felt drunk. He started vomiting. His heart rate spiked. Within minutes, he could barely stand, believing it might be heat stroke, something Steve had experienced before. One friend took him home while AA stayed behind at the airport, waiting for the lawyer. But the lawyer never arrived. No paperwork, no money, no explanation. Hours later, AA returned home to find Steve far worse. By morning, he was completely unresponsive. AA called emergency services, claiming Steve had heat stroke and wouldn't wake up. Officers arrived to find Steve barely breathing, surrounded by trash and filth. He was rushed to the hospital, then airlifted to a higher-level facility. He never regained consciousness. Steve Riley was pronounced dead shortly afterward. Initially, police believed it was a tragic medical emergency, but not everyone agreed. Steve's neighbor and close friend, Billy Burkhead, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Steve had been fine all day, until just before the inheritance meeting. Billy remembered something disturbing. AA had once joked about poisoning someone with antifreeze, and now Steve was dead. Billy contacted police. She poisoned him, he said flatly. I'm almost sure of it. He told officers that after returning from the airport, AA had begun throwing Steve's belongings outside, as if she already knew he wasn't coming back. Even worse, Billy claimed AA lied about getting Steve medical help that night. The story was unraveling fast. When officers accidentally informed AA that Steve had died, her reaction was strange. She broke down crying, then abruptly stopped. Within seconds, she was calm, normal, talking logistics. It was as if the reality of Steve's death never fully landed. Investigators took note. When Steve's blood work came back, the case changed forever. Steve Riley had lethal levels of ethylene glycol in his system. Antifreeze, the same poison AA had once mentioned casually. There was no doubt now, this was a homicide. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a critical detail. Steve had secretly changed his will. Instead of leaving everything to AA, he planned to leave the inheritance to his son. Neighbors reported that when AA discovered this, she panicked. She frantically searched for paperwork, talked obsessively about fixing the inheritance, even Googled how to transfer it after Steve's death. To investigators, the motive was suddenly crystal clear. $37 million slipping away. Steve's son confirmed what others suspected. His father talked constantly about leaving AA, about starting fresh, about finally being free. And multiple witnesses recalled AA repeatedly bringing up poison. By the time detectives finished their interviews, one truth stood above the rest. Steve Riley was poisoned just hours before claiming his inheritance. And the person who talked about the money the most stood to lose everything if he lived. Steve Riley never made it to Ireland, never signed the paperwork, never saw the life waiting for him. Instead, his final hours were filled with confusion, pain, and betrayal. And while millions of dollars sat just out of reach, investigators were left asking one haunting question. Was Steve Riley murdered for money? Or was the killer already counting it before he was even gone?